Hey guys, it's Samantha. I want to share with you guys some brush basics, and in this video we're focusing on face brushes. Alright guys, today I'm going to show you face brushes. I just want to go over some basics. Again, as I spoke about with eye brushes, there are so many varieties out there, so again, if you find something that you love, or I'm using something in a different way than you use it, that's totally okay. There really are no real rules. I just want to offer some basic guidelines to help you if you're a beginner or maybe you're looking for something different that you haven't tried before. Today we're doing face brushes. I'm going to actually use some of my personal face brushes. I know you guys have seen this one before. It's so beat up, my Rite Aid brush. I'm not letting it go. I'm going to start with foundation. I really like this big guy here, a dual fiber brush. I know some people call it the skunk brush. This particular one is a MAC brush. It's been a pretty popular brush for a long time. I really like it because it buffs the foundation into the skin really nicely. So I'm just going to get a little bit on my hand. As I mentioned before, like I'm such a mixer, so I'm using, I hope you guys can see that, 2 different colors. I'm gonna start with the lighter color and go right in the center of the face. And as you can see, we already did eyes. So after I did the eyeshadow, I went ahead and used a wet wipe. I like baby wipes or, you know, anything that works for you, something that's very gentle, just to wipe up any excess eyeshadow. And that's why we do eyes first. You could just see it just like really buffs it into the skin so nicely. It's nice and big, so I'm not here forever and a day trying to use this tiny brush all over my face. And again, if I feel like I start in the center of the face, I can just pull that outwards. A lot of people ask, oh, why a brush instead of your fingers? I love a brush because of the application. I just think it's really unmatched compared to fingers. I know a lot of people like a beauty blender too, and if that works for you, that's awesome. I'll do that occasionally, or if I'm really building up a fuller coverage, I think that's a little bit more helpful. This is more for like an everyday purpose. I love that I can wash my brushes. I wash them once every 2 weeks. I'm using the same products. If I'm switching products or I'm switching colors or anything like that, of course it's going to be more often. But if I'm using the same things every day, I wash them about once every week or 2. Try not to let them go longer than that, and be careful of like where you're sitting them. So if you're sitting them on a desk or in your room or wherever they are, that they're not in a place where there might be dust or anything like that. You want to make sure that they are in a sanitary place. If they're being thrown around your purse, you might want to clean them more often. I also think with your hands, with your fingers, you have a lot of oils on your fingers that you don't realize. So even though the application might look really good when you first do it, by the end of the day, you're starting to see fingerprints or streak marks or stuff like that with fingers. So it's best to stay with a brush. It's super easy. I honestly think it's less work to do with a brush than it is to do with your fingers. Cool, so that's our foundation. And this brush is great for, I would say even cream. I used it with a liquid powder. It's pretty universal. I'm going to go ahead and use concealer. I'm going ahead and grab one of the eye brushes. If you guys watched my eye brush video, I mentioned how universal this brush is. I love it for that reason. I love a brush that can do so many things. We used to joke that we could do a whole face with this brush when I worked at MAC. This is a fluffy, rounded blending brush. We're gonna go ahead and use that for our concealer. Just like that bigger face brush that we just used, it really just buffs it into the skin so nice. So it does all the work for you, really. And if you know, with concealer, if you do really like using a finger best, because sometimes if I'm using a cream or I want a fuller coverage, I just feel like with my finger I can achieve that quicker. Especially good with under the eye, like I'm a little bit more dry, so I feel like my finger kind of melts it into the skin better. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of concealer right where I need it. So I have a few spots that I just wanna make sure are super covered. So next we're gonna go ahead and do a setting powder. I have 2 different brushes that you can use for this, but I really like something like a little bit on the smaller side. And that's because you just want that setting powder right in the T-zone under the eye. Now if you're more oily, you might want to use a larger brush so you could just really get it all over the face. But I find for me that I just want to use it right in the T-zone to set where I do get shiny and keep the rest of it, just the foundation, just to keep it nice and dewy. This is kind of like the foundation, like I'll start in the center of the face and then just like drag the brush out. So the majority of the powder is setting the center of the face, but you're kind of covering everything with the brush anyway. And make sure you cover under the eye. And going back to my trusty Rite Aid brush, I like a brush like this because, I'm sorry, it's so old, but it's on an angle, which is great because it really just fits nicely into the shapes of the face. So it's fluffy, but it's on an angle and it is a little bit stiffer than, say, like a blush brush would be. And then a huge thing with contour and blush is that you should really not be using the same brush. And I feel like everyone has like a cheek brush that they use, but these are very different. So this is my contour brush that I just showed you. And this is my blush brush, which is just like a medium-sized powder brush. Obviously the shapes are different. This is a little bit stiffer, but the other thing is too, you're using blush on this, which is usually like a pink or a peach or a color, versus this, which you want to be, you know, more of like a bronze shade or brown or whatever contour color you use. But if you start mixing them together, your contour is going to start looking that red or pink or peach or whatnot, and it really doesn't look right. So make sure you're using two different brushes for that. Here are the 4 brushes that we used. Keep it simple, guys. You know, don't overthink it. I think you can go into a makeup store and see the brushes and just be like, oh my gosh, there's so many options. And that's why I really wanted to show you guys just some basics. You may not even need all 4 of these for every day. It depends on what your look is and what you do, you know, daily. But I really encourage you guys to try different things, and please don't forget there's a lot of inexpensive options if you want to play around and figure out what's right for you. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and be sure to check out my other video on brush basics.